Hi guys, I have with me Heather Parady, who I actually met a few weeks ago. And Heather has a podcast to help unconventional leaders to get diverse voice heard on LinkedIn. So Heather, why unconventional leaders?
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Andrew, for having me. I love what you're out and doing in the world. It's just incredible. Why unconventional leaders? I think the easy answer is I just started reading a lot of books about leadership and influence and the people in history who really made a difference, like in our culture, made huge cultural shifts. And I noticed a theme among most of them were that they were unconventional. They went against the grain. They stuck out like a sore thumb. It could be, something obvious. Maybe they were disadvantaged in some way. They grew up poor or maybe had a disability or grew up in a culture or area where, they were a minority in some way, or they just had a really strong belief system and stood up for what they believed was right. They were unconventional. And I think it's interesting because a lot of times we discount ourselves because we feel unconventional without realizing that that's kind of the secret sauce to real influence and impact.
So normally when people start out that way, there's a story behind it, right? So what motivated you?
Sure. Well, oh, wow. My dad grew up in the foster care system, and I really was drawn to disadvantaged kids because I grew up with a father who really was kind of childlike in a sense. He just never had a family. The first time he was arrested, he was 7 years old. He just, it was a miracle I was born, really, and survived. And so I went into counseling and therapy as, in college because my intention was to be a therapist. I wanted to go back and be a therapist for these kids. Well, I did. And when I was working a lot with them, I started seeing just so much potential in these young people. And it was often overlooked because of their circumstances and where they come from. And a lot of people would say things like, well, if we can keep them out of jail, then it's a victory. And like I mentioned earlier, really studying influencers and people throughout history, I realized hey, this is like breeding ground for incredible leaders who are to come. And we've got to start seeing people for their potential and not just their current circumstances. And so that's kind of where a lot of this led. And so long story short, I started the podcast and started producing a lot of content around this topic. I don't do traditional therapy anymore, but it's still interweaved in a lot of the work that I do. But yeah, that's where that passion came from.
So is that your own therapy then?
Pretty much. I would say that.
Well, no, it's like I'm part of a coaching group right now, right? So we get coached by the same coach, and you have those group exercises, mm-hmm. And the one theme that comes out is like everybody is a coach because they actually still want to solve their own issues, right? So
absolutely, I will 100% back that up. It was funny in graduate school, everybody entered the program thinking we all knew how to help people, and we all left realizing that we all needed help ourselves, which I think is a beautiful thing because it brings humanity back into it, that we're kind of all on the same playing ground,
Mm. So you're doing that great work, right? Like every day you have a 10-minute video out on LinkedIn introducing new leaders, right? So tell me about that. So how did that come about, and what do you get out of it?
Sure. So I host two different shows. One is Unconventional Leaders, which is a podcast that we air 3 times a week. We've been doing that for a little over 2 years. And that's my kind of big show that I do. And from that, I've branched off into LinkedIn, where I'm doing this micro content of just meeting leaders every single day. It's been crazy. It was just an idea a couple of months ago where I said, I really want to connect one-on-one with people on LinkedIn and start sharing their stories. Because I don't know if you're like me, Andrew. I get a feel for people so much more when I hear their voice and see their personality and et cetera. For me, it goes a lot further than seeing the posted resume. And so I just wanted to bring that humanity piece into LinkedIn and also just connect with more leaders. So we started that spinoff show from Unconventional Leaders on LinkedIn. And it's been an incredible, incredible experience. I think the coolest thing is I get DMs sometimes of people saying, hey, Heather, I just partnered with somebody or just got a new client or whatever, just because they saw that 10-minute video. And it's not because that person was such an expert. It's because that had that likability factor where they connected as human beings and wanted to work together, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. So, and I see that all the time. Like when I talk to people and I connect with about 30 people on LinkedIn every day, right?
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's like, you got to do something, right? So, and then, about like 3 or 4 a week that actually want to talk to you, and then you talk, right? So everybody has a unique story to tell. Yeah. Right, so everybody's like in a way unconventional, right? Yeah. So how do you help them? So what does it take, right? From, hey, I have a great idea, right? I want to be a leader. I want to inspire others, right? To actually get the message out, and how do you help?
Sure. Well, I kind of stole a lot that I learned from counseling and therapy. One of the principles they taught us was the importance of modeling. How important it was to see someone who looks like you and acts like you and thinks like you, representing yourself in a leadership position. And so a lot of like the work that you do, Andrew, with women, it's important for women to see other women. And it's important for people to see others who have come from the same places they have come from and doing great things. And so I think what's really important for storytellers and content creators to get out there and share stories of people doing good work, because those stories are going to be able to reach people who I'll never be able to reach. I have a great friend, Nathan Todd. He has cerebral palsy. And when he shares his story, he's able to reach the disability community in a way that I never will, because that's his message. That's his story. And so I think modeling is one part of it. Also, to just the community aspect of really realizing that, hey, I'm not crazy. It's cool to have outside of the box dreams and visions. You speak with women leadership, and as a woman, there's nobody in my family who has stepped outside of the box in an unconventional way and built businesses and done things like that. There's nothing wrong with the work they're doing, but I never really had a model to see like, hey, here's a reference point for the things that I want to create. And so I think having a strong community of other people who dream like you to say, hey, I'm not crazy. Hey, this is possible. And I actually have support doing this.
Yeah. I'm just seeing on the video that the light is failing me, but I hope that. So you are, you're the unconventional leader, right? So,
I think so.
Yeah, you are, right? I know that. So you're a woman, right? So what is your advice to women out there to be you, or not to be you, to follow their passion and their heart and what they're meant to do?
Not to edit your vision to fit like a societal expectation. I think that's what's been really hard for me, even in the entrepreneurial online space, which is such a beautiful, we live in just a beautiful time in history where anyone can create something from nothing using these online tools. Even in the freedom, I have felt like I needed to edit myself, Andrew, because do you know how many people have said to me, you should target just women? Why are you not doing a podcast for women? Why are you not doing, your business? Why isn't it just for women? And there's nothing wrong with that if that's your calling and if that's your vision. Yeah. But just because I'm a woman, why does my business need to be just for women? I get that all the time, constantly. Yeah. And so what I wanted to say to women is, do not edit your vision and what you feel called to do just because you feel pressured to lean one way or another. You can live fully and wholeheartedly and without abandon, and you're going to scare the crap out of some people who are uncomfortable with that, but they'll move out of the way. And that really doesn't matter in the long end. You're not going to be laying on your deathbed going, oh man, I wish I wouldn't have been so, lived out loud and full. Yeah. It's going to be the opposite. You're going to wish you would have just fully gone after it.
Yeah. And, I had the same experience, right? So I'm a man, guy, and my primary audience are women, in leadership positions. And, when I didn't start out that way, it was my coach who told me, Andrew, right, look, most of your successful clients are women, right? So somehow you connect, right? And I'm like, I'm a man. Well, what do I have to say, right? So I don't have those issues. But then a good friend of mine, who's a VP at a rather large IT company, said, you know what? Yeah, but as a woman, you also need men, to make it, right? So you can't be exclusive, right? So I get it.
Yeah.
How are you helping your audience to get over that fear that which you have that I may not be good enough to get this done, or I may not be good enough to deliver?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, understanding that no matter what level you're at, you're going to feel that imposter syndrome. So I think it's really interesting as the guests who come on the show. I mean, I've interviewed people who are just like leaps and bounds ahead of me, and I just feel so intimidated to even talk to. And when you really dig in with them, they all struggle with that. And so it's not this one-time thing that you overcome. It's this continual process, because every time you level up, there's always a new block and a new fear of who am I to do this? And I think, setting just the universe, rather, that's not the word, the commonality in that we all feel that, and it doesn't necessarily go away, I think helps people feel a little more courageous. It's important for people who are successful to still admit fears, I think, which I really appreciate the people who've come on the show because they're willing to do that. So I think that's one piece. Again, that goes back to that modeling. And then just small, consistent steps. You're not just 100% brave overnight. It's even in our brains, like neuroplasticity is just a beautiful thing to look into. If somebody listening has never heard of it, but it's this, our biological makeup, we're wired to, we can reshape our thoughts in our mind, but if I've been forming a fear in my mind for 15, 20 years, it's not going to take me one day to undo that. I mean, yes, it can be undone, but it's going to take a little bit of time. It's just like a muscle. And so slowly, gradually picking at that away and forming another little baby thought that grows and grows into something bigger, we can change literally the format of our brains, our minds, the way they work. It just takes a little bit of time, and those micro small steps are so important. And that's why I think community is so vital, because we walk with each other through that process.
So if I wanted to work with you, right, if I want to establish my authority, right, my name, my brand, how would you help?
Yeah, so I work primarily through content marketing. I think content marketing is a incredible way to start getting your voice out there, especially if you're not used to doing it. Again, those big leaps are really hard. So I help people start sharing their message to the form of long tail content like blogs and podcasts and YouTube and so forth. So I come in and help people use their voice in that way, and then hopefully from there grow and build and be able to monetize and build a lifestyle around that. But yeah, so that's what I do.
So in my coaching, I at one point I asked my clients, so what are you willing to not do to make your world the way you want it, right? Which I know it's awkwardly
what a great question.
It is, right? Because you often see, like, when you ask that question, the answer to that question is the reason why you're not succeeding, right? Give an example, right? So I have like one guy who said, like, you know what, I'm not willing to make cold calls, right? And the context of his business, that meant that's why you're not selling, right? So from what you see, like all those unconventional leaders, right, that you interview or that you work with, what are they willing to not do that actually is in the way of their success?
What a great question. That's just like mind blowing to me. I'm going to be thinking about that for a while, just in my own life. I think the immediate thing that comes up for me with that is showing up when it really sucks and you're not seeing results. Because as content creators, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, it's such a long game that a lot of times people start a podcast or an interview series, or they start putting their message out there in some way, and they're like 2 months in and they're like, well, screw it. I don't have 1 million followers. I'm not making any money off of this. Like, this sucks. This is hard. I'm tired. I want to go watch Netflix. I don't want to write this thing. And so that continual slow grind of showing up, even in the midst of not seeing those overnight success results that you want, I think that is the biggest thing that I see. It's just that inconsistency piece. And there's a lot you can do to kind of prevent that. But most people aren't willing to show up and do something continually unless they're validated with it immediately with results.
It's true. And that's like, I went to like a Gary Vaynerchuk event like months ago, and he said, you know what, it's a long game, you know?
Yes.
Yes, you can get hit by the bus tomorrow, but then it's over anyway, right? So it is a long game, right? Somebody wants to engage with you. So what are the next steps? How do they get in contact with you? And how do they need to prepare, and what are the next steps?
Sure. Well, I am all over everywhere at Heather Parady. You can find me on all social media platforms except really Snapchat, because I'm just not cool enough for that. I don't get it. Like I have my 16-year-old niece here with me, and she's having to show me how to do it. Like it's a really hard struggle, but most social media at Heather Parady. If you're interested in content marketing help, if you struggle with consistency in content marketing, it's heatherparady.com/content lab. And that's where we teach there. And of course, the show. I just love anybody to check out the show if they feel like they're an unconventional leader.
Okay, so I will put like a link like down here, right, for that. So thank you very much for your time.
It's an honor.
Right?
Thank you.
I was honored, and good luck to you. I'm sure we're going to stay in touch, right? So
definitely.
More power to you.